In my opinion, the most important skill for an offshore bass fisherman is learning how to differentiate bass from other species of fish on their fish finder. In this video, I'm going to share 3 simple rules that will help you identify bass on your downscan and 2D sonar views. I'll also take you out on a lake that's full of non-bass species like drum, catfish, and gar, and show you how I differentiate the bass in real time on the water to put some big bass in the boat. Let's get into it. This is what a school of bass looks like on the downscan view of your fish finder. These small dots are bass, and the reason we know they're bass is because how they're positioned relative to the bottom of the lake and also relative to each other. The first rule in identifying bass is trying to find a group of fish that is stacked no more than 3 to 4 dots tall. If the fish are stacked more than 3 to 4 dots tall, let's say 10 to 15 dots, that's going to be some type of panfish in most scenarios, whether that's bluegill or crappie. The second rule is to look for a group of fish that spread more horizontally across the screen rather than stacked vertically. You may have a group of fish that's stacked 3 to 5 dots tall, but is in a small circular area or in a square area. These are most likely not bass because bass prefer to spread further across the screen or across the bottom of the lake and not be super close together. The third rule is to look for a group of dots that's not stacked too close together and instead has a good amount of space between each dot. You may find a group of fish that's stacked 2 to 3 dots tall that spread horizontally across the screen, but where the dots are extremely tight together. In this case, you're looking at usually a school of catfish or suckers or carp. Bass don't like to be stacked right on top of each other and like to have a little bit of personal space, almost like their own personal bubble. So whenever you see a school of bass on the screen, there should be some space between each dot that's very obvious and easy to see. If the dots are so close together that they almost blend together, 99% of the time those are not bass. The same 3 rules apply for identifying fish on 2D sonar. However, on 2D sonar, bass will look like small arches rather than dots. Additionally, you can look at the length and width of an arch as well as the amount of coloration inside that arch to help you identify bass even when they're not in big schools. This is great when bass are maybe roaming out in the open water in wolf packs of 3 to 4 fish and there's not quite enough fish to get a good sense of how they're positioned relative to one another. In general, bass are not going to have very long arches that have long tails on both the right and left side. Instead, bass are going to have arches that are relatively solid and have some color in the middle, rather than having those long, thin tails on each side. In addition, the arches are going to have that distinct arch shape I'm showing on the screen. If you see a solid circle on the screen, most of the time that's going to be baitfish or some other type of panfish. Bass will have that distinctive arch shape. Again, they're not going to have those super long tails, but they're also not going to be just a solid circular blob on the screen. Using these 2 indicators, along with the 3 rules I mentioned at the beginning of the video, should help you identify bass on both your downscan and 2D sonar views. It's oftentimes helpful to look at these 2 views side by side as well, to get a better perspective of how those fish are setting up across the screen. This isn't a 100% perfectly accurate way to identify bass in a fish finder because there are a few variables that can change up your image that I want to talk about really quickly. The first is the speed that you're actually graphing. If you graph too fast or too slow, this can distort the size and shape of the dots and arches you see on your 2D sonar and downscan views. Therefore, I recommend graphing between 2.5 and 4.5 miles per hour for the best possible image on your screen. Additionally, you want to make sure you have your settings set properly on your fish finder. If your settings are set to one extreme or another, it's going to give you very different images to the ones you see here in this video. If you don't help with your sonar settings, I do have sonar guides on fishthemoment.com for a variety of different fish finders on the market, and they're my settings that I use to identify bass like I have in this video. Now that we've gone through the basics of identifying bass on a fish finder, let's head out to Lake Eucha in Oklahoma to put this into practice on the water. I chose Lake Eucha because it's full of a lot of non-bass species, including suckers, carp, and gar, so it's a challenge to actually identify bass on this lake. Coming up in this video, I'm actually going to show you what different species of fish look like on the fish finder in case you're only looking for bass, and then I'll show you how I found a really nice group of largemouth I ended up catching later in the day. Let's get into it. Today I'm on Lake Eucha in Oklahoma, and I'm gonna try to find some offshore bass. I'm gonna start on a sneaky little subtle point that has a creek channel running right up against it. This is a spot that I don't see as many anglers fishing because there are a lot more obvious, pretty looking ledges and drops that we're gonna be looking at potentially here in a bit. But I wanna start on this point just because I feel like it gets a little bit less pressure than other areas. And what I'm hoping to do today is find a group of fish. The challenge on Lake Eucha, especially in July, is there are a lot of non-bass species in this lake. That would include suckers, carp, white bass, all kinds of stuff that aren't bass. So the challenge today is probably not going to be seeing fish necessarily. We're seeing fish and bait and stuff already all over the screen, but it's going to be figuring out which spots actually have bass setting up on them. I need to take my depth range a little bit down here. I was graphing Beaver Lake earlier, so it was a lot deeper. And so you can see there's a ton of stuff already popping on our screen. It is going crazy right here on our 2D sonar. And if we pause this image, you can see all of these blobs and fish on the screen. And you might see this initially and get really excited, but these are not bass. Bass are usually going to be fairly spread apart from one another and only stacked 2 to 3 dots tall on the screen. These fish are stacked very tight together. They're grouped up extremely close, and they're also stacked more than 3 or 4 dots on top of each other on the down imaging screen. Bass also won't look like these small circular blobs on your 2D sonar. Instead, they're going to be more defined arches on 2D. So if you see a group of fish on your screen that looks like this is usually going to be some type of carp or sucker or other type of non-bass species, especially because of how big those blobs are. These probably aren't even crappie. These are just some other type of rough fish. So this is not what we're looking for. And whenever I see a spot that's just absolutely loaded up with this type of species of fish or just these blobs, I don't even bother trying to continue graphing the area. I just move on right away because the likelihood of finding a group of bass mixed in with all of those rough fish is going to be very, very tough. So let's check another spot to see if we can find some fish. Okay, so I made my way over to another structure spot here, and basically what it is just a flat that sticks out into this lake and then drops off sharply into a creek channel. This is considered a ledge by most people, and I'm gonna graph right on the edge of this drop from this lighter colored part of the contour map into that channel, the darker zone. So as we kind of go through here, I want to try to keep my boat, I think, in that like 15-ish foot zone today, because you see a lot of the bait fish on that 2D sonar are in that 15-foot zone. That's where a lot of the bass, or the fish, not the bass, but all the fish I'm seeing are in, is that like 15-ish foot of water. Haven't seen any bass yet, so we're gonna kind of peek around on this deal. I have caught some really nice fish here in the past, so there's potential we find something here, but you can see there's still a lot of clutter on that 2D sonar view, and a lot of these arches now are not as blobby as the first arches we've seen, but they're more long arches with some mass in the middle, and usually these are not going to be bass either. So we can see some of these arches in here that are blobby but also have some of those tails of the arch. Those are going to be bigger gar, spoonbill, things like that. Some of these other blobs might just be bait fish and things like that. And really we want to find a school of bass, even if some of these are bass, because it's a lot easier to identify bass in groups rather than individuals. Some of these could be individual bass out here, but it's really, really hard to tell. Even some of those fish just popped up on that 2D sonar could be bass that are chasing some shad out here. There's a really nice ball of shad on that 2D sonar, but it's so hard to tell unless we find an actual school of bass. And once we do find a school, hopefully here, I can explain why it makes it easier. But on this spot right here, we are seeing fish more spread out than on the first spot, but still not bass. They are other species, gar, spoonbill, something along those lines, just bigger fish that are longer. So based on what I'm seeing here, not any bass to check out, so let's try to find another spot. Oh, finally! Oh my gosh, we found some bass. They're actually here. Oh, I really hope this is it, guys. This looks so good too. Those have to be bass, right? Yes, 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 yes. Okay, So these are bass. Okay, guys, I've been looking for these for so long. This is crazy. Okay, so we got, on our 2D sonar, we have these arches. This is what bass look like as arches. They are actually arch shaped. They're not super long arches, but they have a decent weight to them, but they're not those like solid blobs. Those are 100% bass. We're gonna mark that as fish. And then if we went back over here, oh my goodness, look at that. There's bait down there. These are even bass here. We go back to the side, the down scan, we go over here. These right here are also bass. You can tell that they're bass because they're not stacked too tall like we talked about at the beginning of the video. They're not stacked more than like 2 or 3 dots tall, and they're spread horizontally. So those are 100% bass too. But then over here, we even have some bass. So these are bass right here in the shad. You can see again, they're kind of, the dots are more spread apart and they're spread horizontally. I'm freaking out, sorry. I've graphed for like 5 hours without catching crap. And now we're finally finding them. It's like, it's crazy because you go for so long sometimes, guys, without finding anything. Oh, I need to mark that deal real quick, 1 second. Without finding anything. And then when you do find it, I'm like almost a 100% positive we're gonna catch fish off of this spot now. But there's a couple of things that make it even better. Sorry, I'm like really excited. It's been a tough day, guys. Yeah, those bass are sitting right there. Look at those fish right there. That is awesome. They're right there chilling in that deal, and there's some rock over here to the right, and we can actually see a few fish in those rocks as well. And so there's not just some bass randomly out here, there's also some rock cover that those fish can be relating to. And the second waypoint is like kind of the more interesting of the two that I'm just graphing over right now. You can see all of those fish that are just, I mean, they are just loaded down there. But on top of that, we have that nice rock cover. And this is what these fish will be relating to, is this rock and this rock specifically. So we know there's bass in the area, but we also know that that rock is there. So we kind of almost want to be fishing the rock and also just kind of fan casting this area. That is so cool. I want to graph around just to kind of see if there's anything else around this general zone, because usually when you find something where there's bass in one little deal, there's usually bass maybe potentially scattered out another little deal. Maybe there's an old rocky spot or something, I don't know. But I'm just gonna keep graphing for a second more just to see, because that spot right there looks really, really good. And it's like on this little point. Oh, there's some more rock here. 1 second. There's some rock there. Ooh, they're here too, guys. Look at those, look at that. There's more rock. Look at that. I just had a feeling. Normally when you find like one little deal, there's another deal close by. Those are all, I'm pretty sure, most of those are bass. There's some other stuff mixed in. There might be some catfish and stuff mixed in with those, which is not ideal. The first spot looks really, really good. One thing I like about this though, is I like on the side scan, we have, again, really nice rock cover right here. So that rock pile right there is awesome. We're gonna mark that. We're gonna mark this. I'm gonna regraph over this because I kind of know where this is and see what is happening. Guys, in July, fishing can be so tough, and it's what happened, I think, is that the current started flowing. There's a dam over here, and it just started generating current a few minutes ago, probably like 45 minutes ago, and I think that's what's getting these fish to actually start setting up right. I think I've been around fish all day. Look at those fish right there, guys. They are absolutely stacked. Some of those are not bass, but some of those are bass, so I can kind of parse that out for you to show you. So it's gonna be kind of hard, but some of these are catfish, I think, or spoonbill or something, but some of these are bass. So I'm gonna point out what I think are the catfish versus what are the bass in here. And I think that there's a combo, and that happens on these Oklahoma lakes all the time, but they'll set up together, but you can still catch them off the same spots. It's not a big deal. And basically right there is where those fish are, right on top of that rocky spot. That is freaking loaded right there, guys. And if we switch over to that down scan view, you can see again, those fish are stacked horizontally, and they're not stacked more than a few dots tall. I do think there's a mix in that, but we have two little nice rocky spots right in 15 feet of water. If we go over here to our chart, we can go over here and see the dam is right here. So that's the dam, and we're just basically on this little curve where that current will basically wash against, and there's a rocky spot there and a rocky spot there, and that current is just going to be pulling from that dam, pulling this way, and it's going to run through those, and it's getting those fish stacked up on that deal. So that is really, really good. I'm gonna stop talking and try to start fishing, because this is the most exciting thing I've seen all day. It's been a really big grind. I mean, a really big grind to find these fish, but I think the conditions are setting up right. I think we're gonna get some bites. Here we go, got him, good one. Oh my gosh, on the 10XD, they're stacked up perfect for a crankbait. I just had to throw it down there. Freaking good one too. Obviously on the 10XD, you're gonna get a good one. Come around this way, fish. Really nice one. Oh, there we go, freaking tank. Right there, guys, that's how we do it. Man, that's how we graph for like 5 hours, because when you find them and they're set up right, you can just absolutely hammer them. So sometimes it's just worth getting there and graphing and graphing and graphing. I think it was 100% a timing deal on this, guys. Fish, we've been seeing fish this size around the lake all day. They just haven't been set up properly. That is a freaking good one. Let me get a weight on that guy. Oh, there we go, guys. 4 pounds, 10 ounces, almost a 5-pounder. That's what we're talking about. July bass fishing, super healthy fish. Let's get him back down there. There we go, guys. Got that fish on the Strike King 10XD. Love cranking, guys, in the summer, and I think that the current that's generated from this dam, they're pulling this lake down, really helps set these fish up. Without current or some type of event like that, a lot of times in July, it's hard to find those fish grouped up right. I probably found 6 or 7 wads of fish this size today that were just randomly chasing on bait, and those fish are so hard to get to bite if you're not using forward-facing sonar. If I had the live scope or active target or whatever on the boat, I would have been able to probably catch them on a big flutter spoon, chasing them around on bait balls. But without it today, I mean, I'm just having mapping on the boat today as I wait to get some new graphs in. And basically, you have to find fish that are set up tight to the bottom like the ones we found here, because those are the only ones that are predictable enough where you can graph them, set up, make a few casts, and actually get them to bite. Those roamers on the shad, they're gone by the time you put the trolling motor in the water. So taking that extra time to graph is absolutely necessary when you don't have that forward-facing sonar. And it's pretty discouraging. I was pretty discouraged for a while there, guys, because it went a long time without really seeing anything and without catching any fish. But now you're on the board, and that's a freaking good one. Got him. Good one. Another one on the 10XD. Cranking this other little spot I graphed over here. There's fish on both these little deals, and I think that I lost one on the other spot and it shut the school down. So I came over to this little spot and got another one here. Another real good one. I mean, those spots looked identical with those fish stacked up, and they both have freaking good ones on it, dude. Oh my gosh, graphing is so worth it. Oh, there we go, guys. Look at that fish. 10XD straight in the mouth. And guys, I'm telling you, when you're fishing in July, you'll see these guys bring in big bags of fish offshore, and you think that it's one of those deals where they're catching them all day long. But a lot of times it's like a 30-minute deal where they wait and wait and wait, and then you find them in the last, I don't know, hour or two of the day, and you absolutely smash them. That's another big one. 4 pounds, 3 ounces. I mean, just another super solid 4-pounder right there, guys. It's exactly what we're looking for. Beautiful fish. Oh man, guys, I love a crankbait bite. You cannot beat that. This 10XD is so effective in this like July, August, September time. It's very situational. You're not going to catch them on it all the time, but if you get a good windy day or you get a little bit of current getting pulled on your lake, oh, it just got hung up on something out there. But if you get the right conditions, there you go, it came out. You just kind of pop your rod like that, sometimes the bait will come out. But if you get the right conditions like we have right here, where that dam that's right ahead of us is just pulling a little bit of current or drawing this lake down, and they're eating this crankbait. I can't get them to bite anything else. I'm gonna try a few other baits. I fished a jig and a few other things and didn't get any bites. So maybe I can trick a few more into biting by getting the right bait, but for right now I'm gonna keep cranking. Uh-oh, got another one. Here we go.
Stay on their fish. Another big one. Golly, I love fishing this 10XD, guys. They absolutely crush it when they get it. And it is just a fun way to fish, and they're all good ones. This one is just, he just absolutely inhaled this thing. Oh my gosh, look at how big these fish are, and just look how he choked that bait. Here we go, guys. 5 pounds, 4 ounces, 5 1/4 pounder, absolute stud of a fish, super healthy. Let's get back down there, fish. Let's get another one. Oh man, guys, and that's why we throw a big deep diving crankbait and we graph for 5 hours. It was not fun during the process, I promise you, but the results were 100% worth it. I mean, we have 2 4s and a 5 in the boat. That is awesome, especially for July. Had to be patient on them, but now that we have them found, we are smashing them. And the way I'm fishing this 10XD, guys, is pretty simple. I'm just burning that thing back to the boat as fast as I can for as big of a crankbait it is. I'm also fishing with a 5:4 gear ratio bait casting reel. It's a slower gear ratio, which reduces the amount of pain on your arms. And I also am throwing a pretty big rod with this. This is a Denali Lithium 7'10", extra heavy, moderate action mag crankbait rod in the Lithium Pro lineup, and just throwing some 14-pound fluorocarbon. And I just try to bomb that crankbait as far out there as I can. As soon as it hits the water, I'm just burning that thing back. And whenever you hit the bottom or hit something, I will stop it, maybe give it a twitch like that or something every once in a while, but most of the time, just kind of grinding it until I hit something and trying to maintain bottom contact out there. The spot isn't actually all that deep, but those fish were in like 18 foot, 15 foot, something in there. So that 10XD just has a bigger profile. It's kind of overkill depth-wise for this spot because those fish weren't that deep, but that bigger profile just gets better bites. And when I'm on a lake where I know there's big ones like this lake has, I'd rather throw a bigger crankbait and get those better quality bites than throw a, let's say, a 6XD, which probably could work here as well, like an 18-foot diving crankbait versus a 25-foot diver, but I just won't get as big of a bite. So that's why I go with the 10XD. Well guys, today was an absolute grind. We did end up finding some bass and catching them on that Strike King 10XD, but it took me over 5 hours to find a school of bass that was set up appropriately to actually get them to eat this crankbait, or really any bait for that matter. I threw a ton of different baits on those couple schools I found, and the only thing I could get them to react to is that 10XD, which is really weird. I threw a jig, Nico rig, shaky head, scrounger head, flutter spoon, hair jig, tush. I threw everything at them and they only wanted this crankbait. So it's kind of an interesting deal that sometimes happens out here when you're fishing offshore. These fish will just want one particular bait, and this was the bait today that they wanted. I only ended up catching those 3 really good fish. I probably could have caught several more today if I had forward-facing sonar, because I found some kind of wolf packs of bass that were chasing big gizzards. I think I probably could have followed them around with a Demiki rig, a big spoon, something like that, and caught more good ones. But without the forward-facing sonar today, because I don't have it on the boat, I basically needed to find fish that were setting up really close to the bottom, tight to cover, and grouped up. And hopefully this video showed you how you can differentiate bass from other species that you see on your fish finder. There were a million, it felt like, carp and drum and suckers and all kinds of stuff in the lake today, as well as a ton of bait fish. So it was really hard to parse out the bass from all the other species of fish that I was dealing with. But it was definitely worth the effort. And in July, you will have to put more time behind the graph to find those quality fish. It's going to get tougher and tougher yet as we get into August and September. So if you want to learn to fish offshore and graph, maybe this is not the ideal time to build confidence. You can do it a lot better if you have spotted bass fisheries or clear water lakes in your area. Those fish are usually easier to find in big schools. They're usually not as big, but they definitely will give you more confidence in just catching fish. But if you already have some confidence offshore and you're struggling to find fish in July and August, don't worry, you're not alone. I do too. I struggle a lot out here, but we were able to finally figure it out after just the persistence and that consistency behind that graph, and that 10XD put them in the boat. So pretty fun day without forward-facing sonar. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave a comment down below letting me know what your favorite tip was from the video. And other than that, we'll see you all in the next one.